We've got Kevin in California who has a strong belief in God from personal experience. And so welcome, Kevin. How you doing?
Pretty good.
I'm going to give you I'm going to start the clock and give you your starting minute, assuming we can actually get the clock up on the screen, because I'd like for you to explain to myself and Jim what it is you're talking about, what kind of personal experience and why it convinced you there's a God.
Okay. I don't think I can convince you that there's a God in a minute, but, I could talk about my belief a little bit. I've had personal experiences that have convinced me that there is some kind of higher power, and I can't be separated from that belief. At least I don't think I can. People have tried, and I made a commitment to myself to stick to that belief because the evidence that I received personally was so strong that I couldn't. I had to write it down, knowing I had to promise myself, knowing that memories decay and conviction fades, and I just had such a long, potent experience that I couldn't let it go. But I feel like I'm talking to an atheist, and you've separated yourself from the spiritual beliefs, so you're more indifferent to that. So you would be in a better position to validate or invalidate claims of God, and that's why people are so interested in shows and discussions like this.
Okay,
but
I'm going to pause you. I'm going to pause you, and we may give you a whole other minute, because what I asked and what I wanted was, what personal experience did you have and why would it convince you of a God? And you talked about everything else except for that. You talked about committing yourself to this belief and how strong it was and everything else. I need to know, I can't evaluate anything without hearing what was the experience and why you think it's confirmation of a God. That's what I'm interested in. So we'll start another clock.
Okay. Well, when I was very young, I was kind of experimenting with different kinds of drugs and things like that, and I got arrested, went to jail, became clean and sober, and when I got out, after becoming clean and sober, for a long period of time, I had just pretty much everything in my life became very spiritual, and it was as if reading material, artwork, personal conversations and interactions, everything had a spiritual aspect to it that was very potent. And I had an injury, and when I had that injury, that kind of went away. But I felt like it was just a part of my body that I was able to get in touch with that spiritual world, and being injured is what took that away. So kind of anticipating that something bad might happen to me, that's why I wrote down my conviction and made the commitment. And now I feel like that's something that I can strive towards to get back to.
I apologize. So that was really good. You ended exactly on the minute, but I'm even more confused because I asked what the experience was and why you thought that it pointed to a God. And what you said is, after getting clean and sober, everything was spiritual for a while, and then you had an injury and the spiritual went away. I have no idea what you're talking about when you say everything was spiritual for a while. I have no idea what the injury is. I have no idea what the experience was that you're pointing to as an experience for God. So,
well, the experiences I had were experiences of something beyond. It was just a strong sensation, and there were things like seeing auras, and it's hard to describe at this point because I'm not there. I'm not interacting with that.
You said you wrote it all down. You said you wrote it all down. If you wrote it all down, tell us what happened. How is it you can possibly call into a show, be given multiple attempts to explain this most significant, profound? You claim to have an experience that you wrote down and it changed your life, and you committed to sticking to the belief, which, by the way, is a really boneheaded thing to do, to commit to stick to a belief. That's called dogmatic. That's called dogmatism. That's called being closed-minded. You should revise your beliefs whenever there's new evidence. As soon as you make a commitment to stick to a belief, you've already screwed up. I have no commitment to any belief at all. But if you had an experience and you wrote it down, why can't you tell us what the experience is?
I can tell you, I mean, because it lasted so long, so it wasn't one experience, there were many experiences. I mean, the first most
I don't know.
profound
Could you
belief was
could you
like
start
large
getting
portal.
somewhere near the neighborhood of maybe giving us some insight into some part, possibly of this, or I'm going to have to move on to a caller who can.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first experience I had, I was just kind of sitting in my living room, and I had this large portal open, and I basically entered into the portal, and in the walls of the portal, there were spirits, and these spirits were calling me, and I was wide awake, and I was awake all night having this experience. And then inside the walls of this portal, I could go into the wall and speak with the spirits, and they were giving me information that kind of brought me to ever higher plateaus of interaction with this kind of other place that's transposed on top of our world. And it was just like a feeling of being educated.
Well, what did the spirits
and it was an
teach
incredible
you?
feeling.
What did the spirits teach you, and how do you know that this experience wasn't just your mind?
I mean, I can't say that it wasn't a part of my body. I feel like being like you have to use your body to access the spiritual world. So it makes sense that it was.
I don't. No. Stop. When you say you feel like you have to use your body to access, I don't care what you feel. I mean, I'm not looking for impressions, because do you have some expertise in how to interact with the spirit world? Do you have some expertise in this? Do you have some knowledge, or just going by your gut?
I think the way that I got there was through study. I think that,
what were you studying?
And art.
Studying math and
mainly
art.
Mathematics, artwork, and language. Yeah.
So why aren't PhDs in math having the same experience?
Well, I mean, I kind of wanted to ask you, and that's one of the big reasons.
Well, they aren't having that experience. So I think we can eliminate math as one of the reasons why you're having this so-called experience. What kind of drugs were you taking, and how long after you had gotten clean and sober did all of this happen?
It started about 2 months, and I have been studying a lot. I mean, it was like 10 or 12 hours a day. So it was, I really felt.
And I would imagine PhD student, I would imagine that mathematics PhDs do the same thing, and that mathematicians who are working in math every day are doing it at least 8 hours a day, maybe 10 or 12 as well. So again, I don't see how math has anything to do with any of this, right? Because nobody else is reporting the same type of thing
in math. So it might have been something related to that, but this is something that I've read about, where you study math more, and as you become more intuitive with the math, you start to recognize patterns and things like that.
Why aren't mathematicians and physicists and other people who work with math extensively doing the same thing? Well, what's the difference between them and you?
I wish I had the experience or the infrastructure to actually say that for sure, but I don't know for sure that they're not experiencing that. I'd like to see more.
Can we at least agree
talking about it?
Can we at least agree that mathematicians are not reporting en masse or in any recognizable quantity that they've been sucked into portals and had communications with spirits?
I guess we can agree on that, but I have met other mathematicians that have talked about like this kind of stuff too. I mean,
have you gone in for clinical examinations to determine whether or not your brain is functioning normally?
I have, because of the injury. I went in and I have a little bit of scar tissue at this point, but other than that,
what kind of injury was it? What kind of injury was it? What kind of injury was it?
I got basically a board fell off a roof and smacked me in the head and knocked me out. And then after that,
So you
traumatic brain
suffered injury to your brain, and after suffering physical injury to your brain, you had experiences that you were convinced are about a real spirit world. What did the spirits tell you? Give me one thing that the spirits told you that would be profound.
It was the other way around. I lost my connection to the spiritual world after being knocked on the head, but it had lasted for months. And I have journals where I wrote down pictures and equations and all kinds of stuff. And
you got to answer the question that I'm asking. Tell me one thing that these spirits told you that is profound and true.
Okay. Probably the thing that was most profound to me was that I had this sensation of being like pulled straight out of my eyes and looking back at myself. And it was me looking down.
Kevin,
and
I asked you, Kevin, I asked you to tell me something the spirits told you that was profound and true. I did not ask you to tell me how you felt like you were being sucked out of your eyes. You said the spirits told you things, and I asked you to tell me what they told you that was profound and true. Your inability to answer the question that's asked is making you an incredibly unreliable witness, and I can't take any of this seriously. What did the spirits tell you?
The experience was the communication, so they didn't communicate in words so much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Didn't communicate in words. I don't know what higher levels of interaction means, but that would be an interesting definition. And again, I don't know what math has to do with any of this. So
I'm so confused.
Yeah. I also like to know who his math professors were that were claiming they had the same thing happen to them. That would be interesting. And where they were teaching at.
Yeah, it's, I hate to make assumptions. Somebody used substances. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that the drugs necessarily led to it. It also doesn't mean maybe the drugs were self-medicating against some sort of mental illness. I genuinely wish Shannon were here. Maybe Kevin could call back when Shannon's on sometime to talk about this further. But I did a video not too long ago that was called "Answer the Fucking Question," because after all the years of being on the show, myself and my co-hosts are pretty good at asking the right question in order to direct the conversation towards clarity, not necessarily towards an answer, not necessarily towards, your conclusion or our conclusion, but towards clarity. And I gave him 2 minutes on the clock before we ever got to any of that. And then it turns out, well, the spirits told me things. Oh, what did they tell you? Well, they didn't tell me so much as they communicated by making me feel like I was being pulled out of my eyeballs. Okay. Maybe all of it's true. Yeah. Maybe Kevin has had a profound experience that is true that the rest of us will never experience. But Kevin's experience is absolutely useless to everyone else on the planet until Kevin can explain it in a way that other people can understand it. Until then, you had an esoteric experience, and it is absolutely useless to everyone else.
All right.